Okay, sorry, it just froze. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sundays Are for Contemplation. Thank you for tuning in. We're your hosts, Sophia and Nicole, and we're here today with EV3. Hi, EV3. How are you? That's how you pronounce it, right?
Yeah, either way. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And so, for any listener who's here today, just to preface, EV3 is one of our artists in residency for the Primavera Digitale Residence. And we are now, at the moment of recording, currently nearing our last Sunday of the residency, which means that the artists are currently wrapping up their projects. And the final presentation is this Sunday. So I guess we can start off with asking how you feel that the end is near. And also, if you want to explain a little bit about what you specialize in and how you started off getting to know this residency and how he came to be here.
Yeah,
Sorry, there's a lot of questions at once.
yeah. You might have to prompt me through them again. How am I feeling? Just really sad that it's ending. Honestly, it's been like so awesome to chat with everybody like once a week, and then chat with the small groups. Kind of just talk about our pieces that we're making, and then just kind of like Renaissance art history in general has been really cool, and also like philosophy and crazy stuff like that. The other question was, what do I specialize in?
Yeah.
And it's creative coding is what I'd say it is. So a lot of like lately I've been exploring a lot of like glitch art with like custom crafted code, and a little bit of like file glitching stuff, which has been fun to learn. And then some like generative art, so like long form generative where I'm coding in P5.js to create abstract shapes and stuff like that, and then it's like one algorithm that makes a bunch of different pieces.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are my two main focuses right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
And also for you as an artist, how did let me phrase this right. Sorry, my mind is everywhere today. How did, can you ask the question for me, Nicole?
I can ask you a question. No, I think it's very interesting that you combined. You said generative art. Maybe can you explain how you got into that? Like maybe did you get into art first or coding? Because I feel like it's like to most people it might be two very opposite like things. So I think it's really cool that you found a way to
That's
mix and match.
Yeah, it was kind of a roundabout way how I got into it. For the longest time in my early 20s and all throughout my childhood, I was more into music, like writing songs and that kind of stuff, a little bit of composing. And when I was like 24, 25, I started coding like professionally. And throughout that period is kind of when I got into like the Web3 crypto world. And it was mainly honestly just try and like I started doing visuals to put alongside my music, my compositions. And it started with doing like GAN art, which is like old AI tech, like where you don't prompt it with words. You just like get you train it on your own custom data sets, and then you get like a bunch of outputs and you have to search through them. So that was fun to like get started. I'm trying to put that with my art. And then that kind of just morphed into getting more into the tech side of art things. And then eventually someone was just like, hey, you're a coder. You'd really like P5.js, which is the software that a lot of creative coders use, especially for like long form generative stuff. So I checked it out and I just like fell in love with it like right away. And then I just like have been doing it pretty much every day since. So yeah, and then everything from there has just been an evolution of like learning the software, learning just basic stuff, kind of like growing my artistic eye, that kind of stuff, and then eventually finding like glitch art and working with shaders, which is like manipulating individual pixels, and that's where things got like really fun and exciting for me, and where I feel like I started to find a little bit of my own voice.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense now because I was just commenting this to Nicole the other day how there's one of the artists in residency who he is the only one who hasn't done anything visual. He's a composer, he's a
Mhm.
poet, and I remember that you had said something to him about like recommending an music style. I think it was he was trying to find maybe a Baroque style of music or something. And you're like, oh no, you should try maybe this specific piece from this specific era. And I was like, I wonder what he knows. Like, where did he pick that up from?
Yeah, definitely not like I don't quite know to the level of specific pieces. I just
Mhm.
happen to like Chopin and it's like romantic piano music. And so I was that's just like something that I happen to listen to. So I was like, this would sound good with that.
Well, you sounded very intelligent in that when you said that. I was like,
Let's go with I knew exactly what I was talking about and I knew all the options that
yeah.
could have been and not
But
just that I had listened to.
how long had you been in music then before you got into this?
My dad is a music professor and he taught me piano since I was like 5.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I was doing like classical essentially until I was like 12 or 13.
Hmm.
And then I was like, screw you, dad, I'm going to learn guitar instead. Um, so I started doing that for a while, like started doing bands and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and then eventually kind of got back into piano via like synths and that kind of thing. So like right now I play in a band with like
Hmm.
synthesizers. So it's fun. I'm
That's
not nearly as good as I used to be when I was 12 playing classical music, but it's still fun.
yeah. And what is your band like? Is it kind of like Tame Impala? Is it a bit grungier? I'm curious.
Yeah, more along the lines of Tame Impala. It's the way I describe it is like 80s synth pop.
Hmm.
So there's like Prince influences. Like we're doing a Phil Collins cover. So like between
Ooh.
those two, you can kind of get an idea of what it sounds like. A little bit funky, but yeah, lots of
Yeah.
cool synth sounds to play around with.
I totally like I want to hear your music. So I don't know if now you would like to share it or after, but I want to listen to this. It sounds so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's Seance Crasher is the name of the
Mhm.
band. So feel free to listen to it. We have an album out on Spotify and iTunes and stuff like that, and we're
Nice.
working on a new album that's I
Mhm.
think going to sound really good. So we'll see.
What
We'll
is
see when it gets out though. It's been a slow process.
okay, I was just about to ask that. That was my other question, but that seems very interesting that you're a versatile artist then. You do a little music, coding, visual stuff. On this note, relating back to the residency, then, considering that you had a bit of formal training with your music, what did it feel like to be learning like every Sunday the history of certain art movements and kind of bouncing back from other artists that were in the space? What was that experience like for you?
I really liked it. As far as like the visual side of things go, other than one class in high school, one art class I took in high school,
Mhm.
which was just like the generic everyone takes this art class. I haven't had any like art education. It's all like been self taught and experimentation and YouTube videos and stuff like that. So to get like one just talking with people who like really know their shit was awesome. Um,
Mhm.
and then yeah, and just like learning about it, reading about it was very cool.
Nice. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, well, not just related to, I guess, classical art that we were kind of talking about in the residency with Renaissance themes, but I know we kind of spoke a lot about like new mediums and AI. I kind of wanted to ask you. I know you're, since you are in like you code to create art. I mean, how do you feel about like AI art? Like maybe it's, I mean, you can incorporate it, you can also not, but it's, I mean, I don't know if I put the amount of work that you do in creating these codes, it might seem like cheating. I don't know if that's the right word to say, but I would love to hear your opinion about that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that I'm like constantly reevaluating. Um, I think overall, my opinion is that it's just a tool, and you can really like it's going to be here, so you should learn how to use this new tool that we have. Um, I totally get like especially like illustrators who are like nervous about like it can just like kind of takes away a lot of their, or I don't know, it can take away a lot from them. It feels like, and also like I had a reaction to, I saw like uh, an AI do a creative coding, like the AI made the code for a long form generative piece, and I didn't like it. So like I had a negative reaction to that. So I totally get the kind of like gut reaction against it. I just think it's important to like, yeah, take a step back and just kind of be like, well, this is just how it is, like from an artist perspective. And then for the like a collector's perspective or like a viewer's perspective, I would just say like mess around with it, make sure you know what it can do, so that that way you can see like, okay, this is someone who's like a beginner artist, and then put out something because it can still look good, but they haven't really put effort or thought into it. Versus like, okay, no, this, even if they're just using AI, but they put a lot of effort into it and you can't reproduce this easily, then it's something maybe that's, worth like paying more attention to. And then especially like if you're training your own data sets, if you are using it as part of something else, I think everyone should be at least experimenting with that and seeing if that's something that can improve their artistic practice.
In a conversation that we had with Ruby last week, she was saying that she felt like the digital art community on Web3 right now on chain has been maturing a bit. I was wondering if you felt the same way from when you started to now, if you felt that it's been maturing or going for the worse, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think slightly maturing, mostly in the sense that like we've kind of gotten rid of a lot of the people who are just in it to speculate and just make money off of it. So now we're like down to the core community of people who really care about art, which is really cool. It's a cool place to be. I still think we need to find like our footing and like find our voice. But oh, you guys cut out a little bit. Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. What was I saying? Yeah, so like we need to find like our footing a little bit. It still feels like we're still like kind of wandering about. We have different ideas. There's a lot of like, I think, hesitancy to talk openly about just like our feelings about art. Even if it's a negative one, I think we should be able to say like, this just isn't for me for X, Y, and Z reason. I do like it for this reason though. Like we should be able to talk about art that way, and it feels right now that we can't. So yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Like we still have a way to go. Sorry, yeah. What's up?
Sorry. No, could you elaborate a bit more about this, about how people aren't, I guess, critiquing as much art? Do you mean like on like X or just, or like in what sense? As someone that might not be in the on chain like community.
Yeah, it might just be just social media in general. And I think it mostly comes from a good place of just like, I'm not going to say anything bad. Like if I have something bad to say, I'm not going to say it at all. I'll only say the good things. I just think that there's a lot of artists that are just starting out their careers. And I would actually put myself in this category. Like I started becoming an artist 5 years ago, like when I first got into crypto. And so I've been evolving as an artist. But you can only really evolve if you can't evolve just from being praised for things. You also need to be told like, hey, this actually like just subjectively isn't good. Or like this part can be better in this way. And there's a lot of things about art that are like totally personal, but you can still hear people's opinions and then decide yourself if you want to listen to that or not. See if that criticism aligns with you. If it does, then take it to heart. If it doesn't, then move on. But I think that those things should be out there for people to kind of consume. And
Have
also,
you encountered? Sorry.
I was just going to say.
Go. Okay. I was just going to say, like, how much have you encountered from other people of them giving you constructive criticism, if any criticism at all?
I have to seek it out. So like
Okay.
I literally go to like my friends whose opinion I respect, and so like mostly like artists and collectors,
Mhm.
who like I know, and I know, and I preface this with like, hey, I want to hear your actual opinion as if this was your art. Um, so yeah, I purposely seek that out.
Mhm. Yeah. And your relationship with collectors, for example, I'm curious, how has that also changed over time? And do you find that you have like personal relationships with them, or how?
Yeah. I don't know. It's been a very interesting journey. I think like getting to meet people in person, it's like a huge changing point. Like being able to go to conferences and like actually meet someone that you've talked to online, was like super important. So like meeting Kay, like in
Mhm.
person, getting to hang out with him is like, oh, you're like a person, and we're like friends now. It has nothing to do with you buying my art or not. Like that's a separate thing that wouldn't matter.
Mhm.
So it's really cool to find those relationships, to find stuff where you're just making friends. You're making friends who like art. So that part is like amazing. I love it. There's also collectors of mine that like we don't really talk, and that's cool too. And they buy like a lot of my stuff, and like I'm like, all right, well, I'm here if you ever want to talk, but if you don't, that's cool too. And yeah, so
Yeah. Do you think that there should be like a set way for how artists have a relationship with collectors, or not really?
no, I
Fair.
think I think it's just more rewarding to have personal relationships. But I
Mhm.
could totally see an artist just wanting to be like, I don't know, what's like mysterious and not talk to anybody, and like maybe that's their persona they want to portray, and that's part of their art somehow.
Mhm.
And I could see that being that working out too. So I think it's really just a personal thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, going back to you having met Kay in person, will you be coming to Florence in person to see your art?
Yeah, I will.
Yay, that's exciting. Okay, we're all gonna be there. I'm so excited to see everyone's art too.
Yeah,
Is it the full week, the full festival?
yeah, yeah. I'm super
Oh my
excited.
god.
Yay.
Yeah. What are you most looking forward to when you get to Florence?
I think just hanging out with all you guys, getting to meet everybody, getting to eat food with y'all. Um, Close second would just be like seeing all the historic sites and the art that's there.
Yeah. Have you been before or no?
Mm-mm. This is my first time to Europe, actually.
Oh,
Wow. Oh my
Florence is
Yeah,
god.
a good city. It's a good
Yeah.
city to be your first.
yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be so fun.
Yeah. I think also like in the residency, one thing I want to say is that I love how serious everyone has been taking it. And I think understanding the historical context of the Renaissance, and everyone's project, everyone's putting so much intention into their pieces. And I guess I wanted to ask you too your perspective on your project. I'm going to do a little reveal here because it's not a secret anymore by the time that listeners listen to this. But the project has centered around the sacrifice of Abraham and Isaac. And everyone has had such vast interpretations, some taking it very literally, some comparing it to an entirely different story from a Bible or a different religious text. And I wanted to ask you a little bit on your piece. Where did you get your inspiration from, and how did you interpret it?
yeah. So this one actually also like kind of evolved for me. Um, I was like born, or I was sorry, I was raised religiously, like pretty heavily, and then in my 20s, I like became like hard the opposite pendulum swing, and now in my 30s, I find myself kind of like going back to the middle, where like I recognize the benefits, but also like the dangers of what I would say are the dangers of like religion and faith, are so I'm kind of coming at it from a little bit more of a cynical viewpoint, I would say.
Mhm.
So at first, I was just looking at the, like the literal interpretation of a father being willing to kill his child and how awful that is.
Mhm.
And to me, that's a warning against like blind faith. Like you are willing to hear this voice in your head, whether it's someone else's voice or just your own internal voice. And because you believe it's attached to something else, you're willing to like murder. Um, so that was my initial interpretation. Um, and then kind of hearing everyone else's, I'm hearing, and from different religious viewpoints too. I kept on hearing the less literal interpretation, the more forgiving interpretation of being like when you um, like when you align yourself with a goal, like a greater good, um, whether that be like a higher power or like just a mission that you believe in. And even if you do something wild and dangerous and hard, if you go through it and you stay on that path, then you'll be rewarded in the end, or like good things will come from that. So I was like, man, maybe I'm being a little too cynical, because like that's a good message. I like that. So what I did is in my art piece, it's actually going to be you'll see like 3 different panels, and 2 of the side panels are each of those different stories, and then the middle one will be just Isaac, who, like in my view, like in both situations, both interpretations, he's like a willing participant, a willing sacrifice, which like is to me is like a cool thing, like willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good, or even just for someone who says it's for the greater good. So that's like the central panel in my work.
Right. Let's go. See, like, did he take inspiration from the first session with Brunelleschi and the panels on the? I think it was the door, right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Or
I'm not. It's not ringing a bell, so I'm probably not that specifically, but
Yeah, no, that's okay. Did you find that your interpretation involved though? Like, did you start off thinking that you were gonna have it cynical?
yeah, it was gonna be purely just like about the dangers of blind faith, and then it evolved into this kind of like multifaceted, different viewpoints type thing.
Right. Yeah. I think is it like normally how you approach like a project of yours? Is it a slow thing for you or is it very quick?
Definitely slow, and like changes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I view it more like, for me, I'm not really like an executor of ideas. I'm more of like an explorer, I guess, where like I have like a hunch or an intuition. So I start doing that, and then maybe I'll experiment with a couple other ones, and then I'll go further down the one that I like the best, and kind of keep doing that, keep branching out, just like following my intuition, like little bits at a time, or like trying out new ideas. But I don't really ever have like, this is what I want to do. Now I execute and do it. I've tried. I can't really do it. So I envy the people who can. But at the same time, I really have fun with that, like kind of explorative process. Is that how you say it?
Yeah. Explorative.
Explorative process.
And your inspiration for your art, is there like something that's kind of, I guess, like your motivation or inspiration, or like, I don't
Like
know,
an
like,
anchor?
yeah, no, maybe not anchor, but like, I don't know, maybe some people are more philosophical and like their art is kind of surrounded about like the things that they think about, or maybe the things that they experience or feel. Is there something that you feel like your art is more focused on, or like taps into, and like your, I don't know, identity?
Yeah. It's a little bit of both. Like there's definitely like things that I want to say, but I'm also a big believer in like art that isn't explicit is maybe a little bit better, in my opinion. So like my example is always like Lord of the Rings versus Chronicles of Narnia, where Lord of the Rings is a little bit more, it's just a story. It does have meaning behind it, but you have to kind of like search for that meaning. Whereas Chronicles of Narnia is like explicitly trying to convey a message and a moral. And in my mind, I like the Lord of the Rings better for those reasons. So I try and do that in my art, where I'm like, yes, I have things to say, and maybe that's like, I'll start with an intention of that, but then I'll just like let let that go. I'll start with that, let that be the seed, but then kind of let that go and let just like, again, like kind of, I try to let my intuition kind of guide me with that stuff. So that just let my subconscious kind of talk, even if it ends up saying something different than what I originally intended.
And so would this, well, going back to like the example that you used, would this be kind of like for you, is it important for like your audience or to be able to interpret your art? Is that like kind of like where you see the value is allowing like others to interpret it, or is it just more of like a, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't want to put word like ideas in your head that aren't there, but
No, this is definitely one that I thought actually a lot about, of like how far on each direction do I want to go? Because I do have like a very specific, like I told you guys, I have very specific interpretations and I kind of want to convey those.
Mhm.
But I tried to do it in kind of an abstract, symbolic way, so that maybe people can come up to their own interpretations of it. They don't necessarily have to take mine. Because to me, that's part of the fun of art, is just like, why is this the way it is? And if I just tell you what it is, then that kind of takes away some of the fun, in my opinion. So I hopefully did it in such a way where people can discuss and talk about what they think it might mean or what it means to them, even though I might have my like initial like my initial like reasoning for why I did what I did.
And so, also, since you mentioned that you kind of try listening to your intuition to create a piece or get inspired to make a piece, how do you best listen to your own intuition?
That's
That
one of
is,
the questions.
so what did you say?
We said we always ask very deep, hard questions. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a hard one. I think just practice, and this is where like I have to get rid of my cynical thing, because this is where like having faith comes in, where you just have to be like, you know what, I don't know that this is right, but because I'm feeling it, I'm just going to go with it.
Right.
And I think just practicing doing that, just do it in everything, not even with art. Just do it in life.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's such a, like, to me at least, that's such a great way to live life. It's just like, you know what, this feels right, and I'm just going to go with it, even though it's like scary and not logical and a bad decision. I'm just going to go with it anyways. And yeah, and I think worst case scenario, even if it doesn't lead to something, you'll learn something from the experience.
Mhm.
And also you'll be training that intuition. You'll be saying like, okay, this didn't work out. And I believe like your subconscious is like tracking all that stuff. And it's like your subconscious is also learning, but you have to give it the chance to learn.
Right.
So you have to let it kind of take over in a certain sense. And then it'll get better at like decision making.
Kind of like your own algorithm in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you too, with this whole like kind of having faith in what feels right, is there anything that, like creating on the blockchain, for example, does the permanence of having something out there, you can't change it, you can't go back, does it also play with how you're producing your art, or no?
Um, Only when I'm minting like on Bitcoin, because that is truly irreversible. For most other blockchains, like for Solana or Ethereum, technically you can change it.
Mhm.
Um, so because I always like leave my stuff mutable, so I'm not as precious with that.
Mhm.
Although I do try and like, I very rarely mint stuff. I really only mint like the things that I are like, this is something that I would like put my stamp on and like want to last.
Mhm.
Versus like I have tons of just like sketches or unfinished projects and stuff like that that maybe I may or may not share on social media, but I'm not going to just mint all my
Mhm.
sketches just for the sake of minting and trying to sell them. I'm a,
Right.
I'm only gonna mint, yeah, like the things that like this is a milestone type thing.
And
Mhm.
how do you pick those, or how do you know that this is like a milestone? Like, how do you like choose and you're like, this is like me, like this is what I want people to see and like remember me for?
Um, I think that kind of goes back to the intuition thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've had multiple projects where I've worked on them for like a month or two, and then it comes to the point where like, all right, this is like final draft stage, and I'm like, you know what? It's just not. This just isn't it. And so I'll just like scrap it. I might use like bits and pieces because it's like code, so I can just like take bits and pieces from it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there'll be lots of times where I have many unfinished projects, and it really just like I'll just take it as far as I can until I get to the point of like, you know what, I've explored this idea and it's not bearing fruit. But I do try and give as much as I can, try and like give them a chance.
Yeah. That makes sense. I kind of feel like I have a similar approach because I do a lot of writing, like I write a lot of poetry, and I think for me, um, especially recently, I don't know what's happening, but just have so many unfinished poems, and it's just like the idea doesn't fully come through.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of let myself revisit those later, and I'm just like, even if they're unfinished, like I've done it so many times where I've taken a few lines and then just kind of put them together,
Totally.
and it ends up creating a product that's so much better. So
100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like
I've also gone back to projects and be like, you know what, this isn't that bad. It's not like I might have just been tired of it because I worked on it for too long or something, and I'll go back and like, you know, with newfound skills, now I can go back and finish it maybe better than it would have been.
Mhm.
And yeah, or worst case scenario, it's just practice. You know, I kind of see like every piece. Um, Back to your point about like minting and blockchain, like being like precious about like what you're putting out in the world. Um, I definitely fall on the side of like being way too perfectionist, which like keeps me from doing stuff.
Right.
So I'm trying to be better about like saying like um, each piece that I put out there is just a step in my journey. It's not like the totality of who I am or what my art is. It's just like a step along the journey. So that way I'm like I'm more okay with it being not perfect or like not
Yeah.
exactly how I wanted it to be.
Yeah. And also on that note as well, what do you think about having an identity as an artist? Sorry, another deep question. But because I'm
Yeah.
also thinking you totally inspired me with the fact that you like, make music. And that's something that for me has always been a dream of mine. Like I imagine myself as this like rock star who's like been around the world, and like I barely play the bass, like I'm not that good at it. So I just think for me it'd be like a dream to be like, yeah, like I'm a musician, And I don't identify with it, but for you, like for example, do you label yourself with certain things, or like do you find pride in being an artist?
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's definitely like a core uh, characteristic, I guess, or it's like something that I'm proud of that like makes me me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's also important to not have that be the only thing, though. I kind of fell into that trap back when I was like just a musician. That's
Yeah.
all I did, and like there's lots of negative consequences from that, like mental health especially.
Mm.
And yeah, so I think it's important to like you have to be a whole human being also. But yeah, it's okay to just be like, you know, this is like a core, really cool thing that I'm proud of, that I want to like prioritize.
Hmm. And do you think that this is something that, for example, with especially because the like Web3 community is so young, and I know that maybe you don't mint everything that you put on, or like you have only been in this community for like 5 years. Um, do you think that this like sort of visual artist identity of yours is something new, or you always had it in you that you're like, no, like I have been an artist all my life?
Um, I think it's kind of new. It's like something that's been evolving over again like the last like 5 years.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I never really like actually yeah, it's very new. I never really saw myself as a visual artist like at all.
Hmm.
It was never even really something that I like thought about or wanted to do. It just kind of like happened. Um, so yeah, it's new.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I'm also thinking about just now, I had a thought of, Anthony, right? Gallego. He is much older, and I love his advice that he gives in the residency sometimes because he does get to pull that card on everyone. He's like, I've been an artist all my life, like,
Hmm.
you know. And I think even for him, like I admire him so much that he just kind of threw himself into this.
Oh,
And
yeah, he's
it's
always reinventing himself as an
yeah,
artist. He's like
Yeah.
multidisciplinary, like yes, everything.
yeah.
Like,
And two is just like again with like for example, Juanpa, who I'd mentioned before, who's the one who didn't do the visual art at all. He is still so young and he's coming to this too like kind of like fresh, like had no clue of anything beforehand. Well, not no clue of anything, but just like with the whole web3 world. And it's just it's nice to have a community of people who are just all really trying to help each other out.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate it, you know.
Yeah, me too. I really feel like I found like my tribe, and like I found some people that like really align with how I feel and who I want to be around. Yeah, it's been
Mhm.
awesome.
Do you have any sort of like long term goals for yourself in this community?
or
Um,
dreams. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean goal. It can be dreams.
Goals, dreams.
Yes.
They're different.
I think goals would be just like continue getting better as an artist, continue like strengthening and honing my voice. I'm like I really want to like create something that no one else can create, like that's uniquely me, even if it isn't like the craziest or like most pop thing that there is.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, honing my voice, honing my craft, like learning new things, um, and then yeah, meeting more cool people like you all, getting to meet all the cool artists and collectors and people out there, just kind of continue to grow that community, and like strengthen that. Um, Dreams, self-sustaining as an artist would be awesome, so I can
Yeah.
like dedicate all my time to doing this. Um, but if not, it's fine. Like having a day job and doing this on the side would be totally fine too.
Mhm.
In
Yeah.
some ways, like not having to worry about money is not like nice. It kind of frees up your art.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of fine either way. Yeah.
Mhm. It was just also too before this like episode, I was talking to Nicole and I realized that I don't know if it's a taboo subject or if it's just something that I haven't asked, but I actually don't know what a lot of artists do in their free time beyond art.
Hmm.
I know there's some of our friends who do this for a living. Some of them are completely like starving artists, like just making it.
Yeah.
And there's others who actually succeed commercially like very well. Um, and then I think there's a lot of people who are just maybe they have a 9 to 5 and this is something that they're doing in their free time. And I realize I don't have like a set pulse with what everyone is doing.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And it's yeah.
Yeah. I never really thought about it, but you were absolutely right. I kind of like it. I don't know. It's kind of like we're all like on a level playing field. We're all just artists.
Mhm.
So I think there's something beautiful about that. But at the same time, I don't think you should be like scared to ask people what they do. Like
Yeah.
if someone like is in a position to, if someone's like a full time successful artist, then maybe they should, if they want to, be open for advice or help or something like that. Whereas you probably wouldn't go to the person with the 9 to 5 for like
Right.
commercial marketing advice.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I was just thinking even, well, when she asked me this, I was thinking of an artist that I met in New York, and she's like a doctor, like daytime job, and then she's an artist,
Hmm.
at night. And but it was very interesting because she told me, yeah, like my doctor friends don't know I'm an artist, and my artist friends don't know I'm a doctor because they're just like it's two different worlds, and then they're just gonna or they're just gonna be like, why are you doing that? Like the artists are gonna judge that I'm a doctor, and the doctors are gonna judge that I'm an artist. And I was just
Yeah.
like, so I never thought about it. I was like, I would just be proud that I'm, what was the thing that you said the other day about being like
The
three
best.
No,
What?
like you could do
Oh,
like
triple threat.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I'd be showing it off, but it was, I guess it's something that I was like, yeah, maybe people don't want others to know that they're not just an artist because
Yeah.
they're
Mhm.
branding or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, Dr. Artist. That's
I
awesome.
know, I was like that.
Um,
I would be like parading it around like my LinkedIn, like everywhere.
I do think there's, yeah, I definitely get that. Like a fear based of just like they won't accept this part of me. This group won't accept this part. This group won't accept this part. Um, but probably not great to base your life off of fears like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is also something that I'm kind of just exploring right now with my thesis. For context, we're both in our last year of uni, and
Nice, congrats.
thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. And I'm currently writing on protections for artists on chain, specifically in the US, like legal protections.
Hmm.
And I've been just having some conversations, and recently a fellow lawyer told me that there is this sort of like a social contract that exists within Web3 where, there's kind of no rules to how you do things, but there's maybe other artists or collectors who, if you act in a certain way, like I think if it's like if you mint the same piece on two different blockchains,
Yeah,
like that's a total no-no, right? And
yeah,
it's not illegal, but you might get shunned, so to speak, in the community.
yeah.
And I don't know if you had any thoughts kind of on like these unspoken rules that exist. But I'm totally fascinated by it if you want to share any
Yeah.
sort of, yeah.
Man, you guys ask such good questions. Yeah, I think some of them are good. So like
Mhm.
that one that you just mentioned is I think is a good like social contract. Like the whole point of NFTs is like to promote digital ownership.
Mhm.
Um, and it's kind of a little bit of smoke and mirrors because like it's actually an NFT just pointing to a decentralized database that isn't even actually the blockchain for the most part. Uh,
Mhm.
so we need to do everything that we can to like enforce that like no, this is a real societal thing. Because at the end of the day, that's what so many things are. Like ownership in general is just a social contract that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's legal stuff too, but like, and it's enforced by governments. But to another degree, you can say that's a social contract. Um, so I think stuff like that is good. If this is a one of one and you mint it in two different places, then it's no longer one of one, and whoever bought it as a one of one just got ripped off.
Right.
Um, so stuff like that's good. I think there's some things that are social contracts or just like trends that aren't so great. Like I think we should be able to talk. Um, we should be able to critique art like in a positive, helpful way.
Mhm.
But like so, there's stuff like that that's like kind of taboo because like I think the reason it's taboo from the collector's side is that you're worried you're going to hurt someone else's bags. Like you're worried you're going to devalue this artist.
Mm.
Or that could be the same for another artist. They're like, I don't want to like hurt this person's chances.
Yeah.
Uh, so something like that, I think, is something that maybe we should think about, like a better way to go about that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I can't think of anything else at the moment. So if you have anything else, let me know. But that's all I can think of.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also speaking from this not only just from my research side, but like in my very, very brief experience with minting a bit of my poetry in a more visual sense, I just had to learn what it was like to choose like a certain marketplace, like what chain I wanted to do it on. But I think there's so many things that I'm just like, I don't know, like if I should put this piece up for auction, make a one-on-one, sell as many editions. And I was just like, you have to hit the ground running with that. And I think there does sometimes exist a little bit of a barrier to entry for artists who like could find a very supportive and uplifting community. And I think that's from the foundation side something that we're trying to like promote access to everyone. Um, but it's true that sometimes like I'll go on Twitter or X and there's just like a bunch of artists too who are like selling art on a certain marketplace or chain because like it's so low, like such a low price right now, and it's like I'm just so confused because there's some negative reactions, there's some positive reactions, and it's just kind of like sometimes I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So
I don't think anybody knows what's going on. I think, and that's part of like the maturity, like conversation is like, we're all still figuring this out. No one is like, zero people are Web3 art experts.
yeah.
There just hasn't been around long enough for that to happen.
Hmm.
Um, there's people who are getting close, obviously, but like, I don't think that anyone like really has a handle on like, this is how it should be. This is what you should do. And even then it's going to be different for everybody.
Right.
Um, I don't know if that addressed your thing or not, but
No, totally. And it reminds me of I had a professor who's kind of recently he's a regulatory lawyer and he works for like one of these, I won't mention which company, but like it has to do with like cryptocurrency and everything. And he told me that when I was doing research for my thesis, be wary of anyone who calls themselves an expert in this space
yeah,
because since it's so new, it's so volatile, constantly changing, like you're not talking to any expert. No one's been here long enough. And it's for me too, like I guess it goes with this whole like decentralized vibe. Like it's the entire community that's giving their 2 cents and not just one person, one organization. But yeah.
yeah, totally agree. There's nobody who's an expert. I trust you way more if you say I don't know what I'm talking about, but I trust that way more than someone who says I'm an expert. And
Yeah, that's true. So I don't know. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
I feel that again, it goes to the whole like decentralization thing. I think none of us are used to not being told how to do things or like
Mhm.
what's the best way to do things. Usually, there. So I think even when you're picking like what like you know chain to like mint on or like what to use, I was like, just do it. Just
Just pick one.
just follow your
yeah,
instincts.
I
Like,
I think that's
so
exactly it. Is just get the ball rolling because there's way too many options. There's way too many choices. Just get the ball rolling
Yeah.
and start doing it, and adjust course whenever you feel like you
yeah.
need to.
But exactly. So it's like I feel like it's like a fun little social experiment because you don't know what's gonna be good and what's not, and there's
Hmm.
no one to tell you or to like
Yeah.
even. I mean, they can give you advice, but like you said, no one's an expert. So I think there's something quite magical about that. You just have to
Hmm.
throw yourself to the chaos.
Yeah, and that's also like what like allowed me to become an artist is like no one no like or like to become a creative coder is like no one's really like, I mean there are people who've been doing it for many years and decades, but it's not like an established art thing yet, I don't think. So like there's still room to like do whatever we want with it, which is part of why that's also what kind of drew me to it is like there's like room to kind of leave your own mark even if you're not like a like expert, just by virtue of like being the one trying out new things, and kind
Hmm.
of expanding that space.
Yeah. And I'm gonna ask a question that's maybe a little bit off topic, but related to the overall thing. I'm curious then, what drew you to apply to the residency? Because I feel like you're kind of like really go with the flow. And I wouldn't automatically assume that you would want to pick this residency because it seems kind of like a structured organization within this community. So I'm
Mhm.
curious as to why you decided to join.
um let's see, I think main reason honestly is Kay. Just like like he's a friend of mine, I know him, he's putting this on.
Mhm.
In general, I'm at that stage where I'm like, all right, my art is like, I still don't think it's like quite where it, like it's definitely not where it's going to be,
Mhm.
but it's maybe at the stage where people might start liking it. And so I'm like, all right, maybe it's time to like start thinking about trying to show it in galleries. So I've been like slowly looking for those opportunities more and more.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily like the highest priority for me, but As far as like the organizational structure, I am generally pretty like loosey goosey, which is why I like organized things like this. To
Right.
like, because like if I'm gonna go, if I can't teach myself this stuff. Like, there's a couple YouTube channels that do art history, and I'll watch those videos occasionally, but I'm not gonna go read a book. Like, that is just not
Yeah.
me. Um, so so yeah, having someone to like organize that for me and like tell me go do this thing is nice, and it has to be something that I'm interested in, obviously. But I am
Yeah.
very interested in Renaissance and art and stuff, so it worked
Mhm.
out.
I feel like reading books is so 20th century. Like,
Dude, does anyone read anymore? It's
Nicole and I were
all
talking about that today. We're like, we need to read. Like, what's happening?
the readings for the for the residency have been so challenging. I mean, like, I love to like listen to books. I'll listen to yeah, whatever books. I've been listening to Dante's Inferno,
Mhm.
but yeah, reading like the pages, and I'll just read the same page like 3 or 4 times. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's hard because I think it's like a skill that people have just kind of lost nowadays. And, everything is so like you can use with Chat GPT. Like, how long has it not even
I
been
know. I'm
around?
like, how did I do any schoolwork before?
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
wrote like full essays at the beginning of my like degree, and now I'm like, how do I like?
Yeah.
Man,
But
I'm 11 years out of school and out of high school, and yeah, I cannot imagine writing a paper. Like,
yeah.
As
actually
like
could not do it.
yeah.
Hmm. It's something that I think about too, because I'm just like, if we're gonna get really philosophical for a moment here, I'm just thinking of like who will be the people who eventually control kind of the information that comes out. Is it going to be the people who are the more well-read, well-cultured, like read the history books to know what's going to happen, or is it going to be those who have quickly learned to automatize like all types of information, like use AI to their advantage, or a mix of both? I don't know.
I
So,
think the mix of both people. I think it's the people who can do the reading and like the hard work, but also know how to like use AI to help them do that stuff.
mhm.
I think that's probably the way to go. If you want to dominate the world, that's my recommendation.
I'll definitely take a note of that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I remember too, like, what's that famous quote that people always say? Like, I think when paper was first invented, they were like, oh, like, this is going to make our students, like, it was like Greek philosophers. They're like, our
Yeah.
students are going to be dumber because they're going to write things down and forget it. And every time there's a new invention like that, they're like, oh, like the
Right.
printing press came out, like, they're going to be dumber, and like,
Mm-hmm.
just keeps going.
Yeah. I think there's pros and cons to every technological advance.
Yeah. With that being said, I'm very excited for the technological advancement that we're currently involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see, kind of as we're wrapping up close to an hour, do you have any sort of final thoughts? Anything you're looking forward to beyond what you already mentioned, Florence? Coming up?
No, just Florence stuff. I am, yeah. I'm really excited to finish the project that I'm working on to kind of show that. Um, it's actually like tackling biblical themes is something I've actually wanted to do for a while.
Hmm.
And I was my like plan was to do it later, and then this residency came along, and they're like, "You do the sacrifice of Isaac." I was like, "I guess we're doing my thing now." So eventually, this will lead to doing more of those. So I'll have some sort of series about like biblical interpretation, modern glitch interpretations. And then I'm also working on a long form generative series
Ooh.
that I've been working on it for like 8 months now or something like that, like on and off, but for a really long time. So I'm excited to, once we're done with this, get back to that, finish that
Hmm.
up, and release that.
Yeah. Do you think you'll approach it with a new perspective?
It's honestly, it was already pretty close to being finished beforehand.
Mhm.
So maybe a little bit with some like final touches, but it's pretty kind of it already has like its voice and its direction that's
Yeah.
going.
Nice. I'm excited to look to see your final presentation, this project you're working on as well.
And we're gonna listen to your music as well right after this podcast.
Cool.
Was it Seance Crusher? Was that
Crasher.
the name?
Seance
Crasher.
Crasher,
Okay.
yeah.
Seance. That's a sick name. I'm trying to envision that type of music, and I'm getting.
I don't know that I don't know the name goes with the music exactly, but yeah, it's an interesting name for sure.
Be honest, did you come up with the name?
I did not. No, I came into the band after the name was there.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on to this episode. This is episode 12, and for our listeners now, you guys will be able to see all of the artworks that have been part of the residency online, or if it hasn't been posted yet, in Florence very, very soon. So, yeah.
Wait and hope.
Wait and hope.
Cool. Thanks for having me all on.